Morning, our reading, the first reading comes from Psalm 90, verses 1 to 6, 13 through to 17. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn us back to dust and say, "Turn back, you mortals, for 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it's past, or like a watch in the night. You sweep them away, and they are like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. Turn, O Lord, how long? Have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, so that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad as many days as you have afflicted us, and as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be manifest to your servants, and your glorious power to their children. Let the favour of the Lord our God be upon us, and prosper us for us the work of our hands. O prosper the work of our hands." And our second reading is from Matthew 22, verses 34 to 40. When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, an expert in the law, asked him a question to test him. "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. On these two commandments hang the law and the prophets." And this is the word of the Lord. Words of life for the whole world.
Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be able to share. I'm the person who seems to come in late every week here, so I got here on time today. If you feel you want to walk out now and come in halfway through while I'm talking, that would be a reasonable and fair thing to do. But no, I apologise because I have to take my son to his work most mornings, and I come when I can. But just want to do a little bit of reflection on, I'd say, probably some of the most familiar of Christ's teachings, I would say, which is that, command to love your neighbour as yourself. And hi, Flick, it's so good to see you. And I guess this is a pretty well-known thought, isn't it? Love your neighbour as yourself, often called the Golden Rule. Not unique to Christianity as such. Many of the great traditions, great religions of the world have a similar kind of idea in them. And yet there's a lot to unpack in these profound 5 words of wisdom. And I wanted to just start, I guess, with the first and last word, love yourself. In the tradition of Christianity that I was brought up in, often there was this sense of you've got to deny yourself and you're out there for the radical love of the world. And in every moment you're kind of looking, how can I be that radical person who includes the other? Wasn't as much emphasis upon the need to love self, but it'd be interesting just to stop and reflect, what would it look like if we saw it as a call in our lives to have the radical acceptance and love of ourselves as much as seeking that in the other? I mean, for me at least, that's an interesting thing to stop and think about. And I just wanted to put up a quote, if it works, and okay if it doesn't. I'll just wait to see if there it is. I know that's the friendship thing, but that's all right. That will come in a moment. But just let me read to you a quote. Oh, there it is. There it is. From Jackie Lewis. And I just think it's worth stopping and thinking about this one. Delight in your true imperfect, uniquely wonderful, particular self. I mean an unconditional appreciation for who you are, head to toe, inside and out, quirks, foibles, beauty and blemishes, all of it. I mean seeing yourself truthfully and loving what you see. And I just wonder if it'd be worthwhile just to take a moment and just quietly by yourself to think about three things that you love about yourself in all your messiness and wrinkles, if you're like me. Three things you love about yourself. Now, I'm not sure if you got that picture. Do we have that there? Oh, you don't have that picture. I thought you said you had a picture of
Which one?
the whale thing.
Oh, yes.
So this is just something I love. I love adventure. One of the things I do is I get out and do a lot of sea kayaking and that sort of thing. And this was with some friends, and we were out with the whales, and it was quite an amazing experience. So that's something I do for myself, and self-love and self-care. And I just wanted us to take a moment to maybe just talk to the people around you. And if you want to, you could even share something you love about yourself, or just even something that you do for your own self-care. So let's just take a moment to talk to one another about that. Just in groups of 3 or 4. Something you love to do, something you love about yourself. So good to see.
Most sorts of music, not so much heavy metal, but speeches of it. I used to play guitar. Got a ukulele. I don't play. And then I was learning guitar. As a cousin, it's that's right. She loves to. Play tennis. My girls play tennis.
All right, everyone, I realise that you're probably just getting stuck into that. And look, maybe in our morning tea, you could kind of talk more about that. But I think it is an interesting concept, isn't it, to think about that it's a calling to love ourselves and celebrate who we are as much as others. I think for me anyway, I find that an interesting thing to just reflect on. Now, of course, it isn't just about loving yourself. This whole idea goes on to, the idea of loving your neighbour as yourself, and we know that one of the famous questions put to Jesus is who is my neighbour, as we think about that. And often, again, in the tradition I came from, there was this sense to see the neighbour as that person beyond your circle who you need to include. And I think that's an extremely important idea. But I think it's actually good to stop and think about, well, hold on, what about loving your friends? Because sometimes actually friendship is really challenging to do well, to have authentic and real friendships. And I actually sometimes think, that's a tough command, that's a tough ask, to keep nurturing good friendship. And I wanted to share with you a poem now from one of my favourite poets, David White, and it's called Friendship. And I'm just going to read it out to you here. And it's a little bit of a long poem, so hang in there with it, but it's a beautiful poem. Friendship. Friendship is a mirror to the presence and a testament to forgiveness. Friendship not only helps us see ourselves through another's eyes, but can be sustained over the years only with someone who has repeatedly forgiven us for our trespasses, as we must find it in ourselves to forgive them in turn. A friend knows our difficulties and shadows and remains in sight, a companion to our vulnerabilities more than our triumphs, when we are under the strange illusion that we do not need them. An undercurrent of real friendship is a blessing exactly because its elemental form is rediscovered again and again through understanding and mercy. All friendships of any length are based on a continued mutual forgiveness. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships die. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships die. In the course of the years, a close friendship will always reveal the shadow in the other as much as ourselves. To remain friends, we must know the other and their difficulties and even their sins, and encourage the best in them, not through critique, but through addressing the better part of them, the leading creative edge of their incarnation, thus subtly discouraging what makes them smaller, less generous, less themselves. Through the eyes of a real friendship, an individual is larger than their everyday actions, and through the eyes of another we receive a greater sense of our own personhood, one we can aspire to, the one in whom they have most faith. Friendship is a moving frontier of understanding, not only of the self and the other, but also of a possible and yet unlived future. Friendship is the great transmuter of all relationships. It can transform a troubled marriage, make honourable a professional rivalry, make sense of heartbreak and unrequited love, and become the newly discovered ground for a mature parent-child relationship. The dynamic of friendship is almost always underestimated as a constant force in human life. A diminishing circle of friends is the first terrible diagnostic of a life in deep trouble, of overwork, of too much emphasis upon a professional identity, of forgetting who will be there when our armoured personalities run into the inevitable natural disasters and vulnerabilities found in even the most average existence. Through the eyes of a friend, we especially learn to remain at least a little interesting to others. When we flatten our personalities and lose our curiosity in the life of the world or of another, friendship loses spirit and animation. Boredom is the second great killer of friendship. Through the natural surprises of a relationship held through the passage of years, we recognise the great surprising circles of which we are a part, and the faithfulness that leads to a wider sense of revelation, independent of human relationship. To learn to be friends with the earth and the sky, with the horizon and with the seasons, even with the disappearances of winter, and in that faithfulness take the difficult path of becoming a good friend to our own going. Friendship transcends disappearance. An enduring friendship goes on after death, the exchange only transmuted by absence, the relationship advancing and maturing in a silent, internal, conversational way, even after one half of the bond has passed on. But no matter the medicinal virtues of being a true friend or sustaining a long, close relationship with another, the ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the other nor of the self. The ultimate touchstone is witness, the privilege of having been seen by someone and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another, to have walked with them and to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for however brief a span on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. It's a beautiful description, I think, of friendship. And I just invite you, maybe just to do this as a quiet reflection yourselves, is just to think about the journey of friendship in your life and what you might want to think, what do you celebrate or grieve or long for? Let's just take a moment of quiet to just think about that. So I just wish for us all the joy of true friendship in our lives, to love our friends. It's a wonderful quest. And talking of friendship, we're going to actually now invite Ken. Ken and I are going to have a bit of a chat together, and I told him I'm not Parkinson, but I'm sort of doing an interview. We're going to grab a chair.
Okay. Coming up on the big stage.
Oh yeah, look, it's a big stage. We can, because I don't know a lot about it, Ken, but I know that you have. Friendship obviously is something that's important to you, and you've been doing some work taking risks. Men aren't always good at taking, I'm not saying just men, but often men aren't always good at friendship. And there's many reports of many not having many friends at all. And I just heard that you've done a bit to expand your circle of friendship. So I'd just love to hear about that.
Sure. This is for the street that I live in. When I retired a couple of years ago, I changed my dog walking routine. So instead of going early in the morning before work or after work, I'd walk throughout the day, various times. And I found throughout the street, there were guys that were either standing outside or doing their gardening, but always stopped for a chat, even though I had a giant German Shepherd with me, which shows how much determination they wanted to have a chat. They would stop and have a chat and talk about this and talk about that. And we ended up, there was one guy who shared with me that his wife had passed. And I was like, okay, we had a good conversation about that. And said, oh, look, why don't we just have a coffee? So we went up the road and had a coffee, and that turned into a weekly sort of thing. And then John Haverchat from up the road, he invited himself along once he heard that we were having the coffee side of things. And from there, it's just grown to the point where we now get, and it's just not the older retired guys that go to this thing. There's a couple of younger blokes that are working from home. So they come up on a Tuesday, and we'll have anywhere from 2 guys up to 8 guys at a time, just sitting there. And it's got to the point, we talk about guys having friends or not being able to talk. These guys are probably at the opposite end of the spectrum, because I have to rein them in and stop them, because one will be talking and they'll just talk right over the top of each other. And it's like, Lawrence, stop. John was talking, and it's like I feel like a school teacher at times.
So you kind of, it's also just getting them together and kind of talking through things that they find important.
And it's interesting, their backgrounds, we've got an Italian, a Greek, Englishman, a Finnish guy, so their histories are wide and varied. So they've got stories like from their childhood and how they grew up, and travel's a big topic of discussion. And again, once you get started on a topic like with the group you just had there before, we were just starting to get right into it, you know. And it's like, once you start something like that, it triggers people, the guys to talk. And even the Finnish guy is a very, very quiet guy, but when we hit a topic that he likes and knows, he'll get up there and talk. And that's when we have to keep the other guys quiet, because he speaks very quietly and very softly. And we have to stop the other loudmouths from, which includes me, the other loudmouths from overpowering it. But yeah, that's grown, and it's now getting to the point where we're getting people. It just used to be the guys in our street. Now it's Mario from 2 streets over that walks his little white dog. That he's now coming along to the group. So yeah, it's really good.
But what a fantastic example of something so simple, but takes a risk of, walking your dog, noticing something, and seeking to invite others. I just think it's a beautiful example, Ken. And I was going to ask you too, you're doing something with the church. What's that about?
We've just started doing a similar sort of thing with the guys from the church. That's just once a month, and that's how the other group started as well. It wasn't every week that we did it, but with the street group, it's now, if we don't have it every week, there's always somebody ringing to say, let's go. So that's good. But the church, we're starting off once a month, every second Tuesday, that we go and have a coffee. And we've only done it twice, and we had, I think, 4 guys to the first one, 2 guys to the second one, and that was Colin and I. And I tell you what, Colin and I found out a lot about ourselves during that that one-on-one. And we had a couple of moments there where, I wouldn't call it awkward silence, but we sit there and sip our coffee thinking, oh my Lord, what topic do we go to next? But it flowed very, very easily once we got into the groove. And I think you find that with guys is that first initial, you just stand there and you don't say much. And then eventually you'll get onto a topic and you both get into one topic that you like, that you can talk about. So, yeah.
It's a fantastic example, and that, yes, pauses as part of it, taking the risk. So look, I just think here is a really simple yet powerful example of loving your neighbour as yourself. So thanks, Ken, really
That's
appreciate
okay.
it.
Not a problem.
It's fantastic.
Okay.
Let's give him a clap for doing that, I reckon. I think it is very important to love our friends, and we've got to love ourselves, love our friends, But I think it is also true in the Christian tradition that you can't deny that there is an edgy part to this love of neighbour as yourself that if we didn't look at, we'd be not being true to the essence of the way Jesus, was, and the radicalness of what he called people to. And of course, we're probably all familiar with the Sermon on the Mount, or a lot of us would be, and one of those really jarring comments that Jesus made, which was the call to move, not just to love your friends, but also to even love your enemies. And there is this, I think it's coming up, this statement by Jesus, which is easy to say, but not really easy to do, is it? Which is, you've heard it said, love your neighbour and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And according to this vision, there's this quest for a much bigger love. Now, I think we need to be careful with this sometimes, if I'm honest, because there's a lot of pain in loving your enemy. And a lot of us have been victims of horrific things, and we just know even what's going on in our world today, that it's very easy to say this, but we need to recognise we're walking in some pretty tough territory when we sort of bring this out there. And I think we need to sometimes look at this with careful nuance, if I could put it that way. And some questions that I would have is it possible really to love our enemy if we actually haven't first been able to love ourselves? And sometimes people are blocked from loving themselves in a bunch of ways. It makes it really hard to move to that, doesn't it? And is it possible to love our enemy if we actually don't have the company of friends able to kind of support us on that healing journey? And I think the other thing too is that we need to be careful with this sort of stuff in work that I've done in other places at other times, is that I don't know that loving always means reconciliation. I don't think we can always be reconciled with everyone. I think that sometimes we love to think that, but I think that that's a journey, that it's a hard journey. And we don't always get there for a whole bunch of really important reasons. In fact, I think sometimes that this call to love your enemy actually can simply mean choosing not to destroy them, choosing not to wreak the vengeance that we feel upon them. That actually can be our loving our enemy. It can even mean, I would suggest, having the courage to bring our feelings of hate and vengeance to sacred places so that we can find some sort of healing, whether that's with the divine or with friends. Remember the song, I think nearly all of us, with a few exceptions, are old enough to remember Boney M's song By the Rivers of Babylon. You know that song, By the Rivers of Babylon? Now, one thing that happens with that's Psalm 137. The interesting thing is usually when that's read in church, they don't read the last verse, because that ends, because it's one of the cursing psalms, and it actually ends with this. And pardon me if this raises things for anyone, but it reads, "Daughter of Babylon, doomed to destruction, happy is the one who repays you according to what you have done to us. Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks." Which are horrific words, but they're an example, I think, of, within the canon of Christian scripture, that we can bring our pain to sacred places, and that sometimes, dare I say it, loving our enemies is actually having the courage to, when and if we're able, to bring our feelings and thoughts into holy spaces, so that we can find the healing to be able to let go of those curses that are within us. But we sometimes even need those spaces, and that can, even just facing pain for some of us, can be difficult. And so I think that the call to love enemies is absolutely part of the tradition that we're all part of here. I think we all believe that is part of what our calling is. But let's appreciate that we're all at different stages in that, and we need to respect that journey. And I think that's particularly the case at the moment. When you look at what's going on in Israel, in Gaza, you know, it's easy to say, isn't it? But there's a journey people have to take, and it's a courageous journey, as it can be for many of us in other parts of our lives. So I just think it's good to pause and and even now, it's probably good for us just to stop and have a moment just to remember our brothers and sisters in Israel and Gaza, Palestine, and what they're experiencing, and the difficult call that many of them might be seeking to make, to love your enemy. Well, how do you do that? Let's remember them. Let's remember also our Indigenous brothers and sisters, who I know over the last few weeks, talking to many, this is a lot of them are hurting with their interpretation of what happened with the referendum. So let's remember them and how hard that might be at the moment, the call to love those who are difficult to love. And let's also remember all of us who are broken in one way or another by the actions of someone else. So love your neighbour as yourself. It's a big ask, and my hope is that all of us will keep working on that, working on the journey of truly loving ourselves and loving our friends, and even, as is right for us, as we can, to reach out and to love our enemies. And I think now I hand over to Fiona.
Let's pray. God of the heartbroken, where are you? Be with the children who cry out. Be with the mourners and the grievers. Be with the frightened and the weary. Be with the thirsty and the hungry. God, come near. God of justice, where are you? Obliterate our apathy. Grow our empathy. Bolster our solidarity. Turn us toward goodness. God, come near. God of abundant life, where are you? Move us to forsake violence. Make us people of healing and care. Lead us out of fear and hatred. Guide us along the path of peace. God, come near. God of steadfast love, where are you? Soften human hearts. Grant us courage and vision. Give us spirits of mercy and hope. Show us the way to mutual flourishing. God, come near. Give us courage to invest in peace, in love, in community. Through Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Online community now. Thanks, Simon. And Jenny and Mark, if you